have the usual suspects, myself, Jamie Gissel, and Bill Forster will be arriving a little late. He's doing some family time, as families should. Apex is popping on right now. So we're really excited about this one. Anybody who doesn't know Apex at this point, you need to get out of the rock or the closet you're hiding in. He puts out more content that I think Fox News, CNN, and ABC combined. He's doing lots of lives, has a lot of opinions, which is one of the reasons that he and I get along very well. We have a lot of opinions and a lot of them overlap. So we invited Pat on specifically to talk about one of the things that is near and dear to his heart, innovating training in the face of resistance. That's one of the stories we hear a lot, that Pat is doing his own thing now because he fought so much resistance in one of his last agencies that it was just doing more for the community by doing less with his agency. So with that, Pat, do you want to lead off with any comments or statements?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, thanks for having me, guys. Been watching your talks, right? So when you guys invited me, I was super psyched to come on. Yeah, off the rip, man. And, I think the name of the game, even though police training now is changing, there's still a ton of resistance from, I'll say, the majority of agencies. Your progressive agencies are probably the few and far betweens. It's starting to take hold, but for the most part, especially in my region, a lot of agencies are really resistant to that change. And I think it's a multifaceted problem. We can go into that, but it's definitely a huge issue. And like you said before, in my agency, I had brought some things up, and there were some instances where I was just like laughed at, even though like maybe current data or current training trends were showing or backing what I was saying. You just get laughed at by these, I've been doing this 30 years, kind of that crowd. So it was definitely a huge point of frustration for me, which when I got out and I started Apex, it's great now because I can do what I want and say what I want, and I don't have to convince anybody anymore.
Right. Now, one of the things that we've talked about before is that, if I remember right, you had been tasked with going to a whole bunch of courses, and you came back from all those courses and you said, okay, this is everything I've learned. Here's the things we can do for the agency. Here's some lesson plans. You had a whole program. And I said, never mind. Is that
right? That was the physical fitness portion. That was, So I was sent to a fitness coordinator / program development course to learn all the case law, behind the Civil Rights Act and what it took and how that affects physical fitness tests in law enforcement. And it was boring but informative class, if that makes sense. But we were super psyched. It was myself and 2 other officers. And when we came back and we put something together, they realized that it was hard and it was going to be a multiple year stretch, and they just kind of shake-handed it. So unfortunately, they wasted their money and wasted our time. There was a little bit of moral injury involved in that one too, but that's agencies lately.
What were some of the reasons why they didn't want to do it?
So I had a chief who was very much into fitness, at least at face value. And then as time progressed, you realized more of a charade. And when we pitched the program, the exact quote that I had gotten was, well, do you know how many sick and injured officers we have? And I was a little confused by it because I'm like, well, why would you send me to go do this if it almost seemed like the answer was no from the get-go. So I was kind of like real confused, but I was actually a newer officer, so I kind of just shut up. You know how it goes. Like, I didn't want to make any waves at that point in my career. But yeah, there was a lot of, we had officers like with Parkinson's, and we had overweight officers and diabetic officers. And I think they started to realize that if they were putting PT tests on paper and people were failing, you fall into that negligent retention, area of civil case law. And should something have happened, it could have caused an issue, which I saw in multiple arenas, especially shooting at the agency too. They did that a lot. And it's unfortunate because it's really by and large the public that pays by getting less efficient and less fit officers.
Right. So what did you do to try to overcome that?
I'll be honest with you with that one. We just kind of tried to change the culture. We did little things from, we had a big whiteboard in the gym, and we would throw workouts up, and we would post our times or our scores or our numbers, and we would put our names next to it. And it caught on. it didn't make the change that we wanted, right? It was incremental change where we did see some effect, but so far as like program wise, I mean, that was dead stop. They shut that down within a couple of weeks of us returning, you know. So we were like, all right, well, what can we do? So we just trying to change what we could, you know. Our unit, it got some people on board. It wasn't as effective as we would have liked it. Like obviously creating a program would have been massive change.
Right. Did you have something, Jamie? I felt like I kept
No,
stepping on you.
no, you're good. So I think one of the big things that I've seen, and people message me all the time. Luckily, I'm at an agency that's pretty progressive and willing to push training and willing to let us do some things in our training unit. Uh, and as far as physical fitness, as far as DT, as far as shooting, all this stuff goes, I'm pretty lucky. But I have people reach out to me all the time. What are you doing? And I think kind of what you said, a lot of times it has to start at the ground level.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you are getting the pushback from the top saying, hey, we can't do this. And a lot of it comes back to that liability. If we train it, now we're liable. Or if we set this standard, now we're liable for guys that don't do it. That's a big problem. But how do you do it? I think it's starting just what you did, even though it didn't catch on, it did catch on with some people. And that's how you start to change that culture and start to change the shift in that training is you get those people to say, hey, I want to be part of this, whether it's putting stuff on the whiteboard and saying, hey, look at what we're doing and bringing people along with you. It has to start there before it goes to the top, I think, in a lot of instances.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, it's like starting that fire, right? Like a little ember, and then hopefully it grows, and you get one or
Hmm.
two. And, you know, we were pretty happy with the turnout that we were getting. And it was unfortunate that our administration was just so set in their ways. You know, I have a story that I tell everybody is we used to have mandatory PT test yearly. Then it went incentive based. So you were getting time off. And I don't remember how much it was, but I used to run it with my buddy every year. And we had a guy come in who did like 100 half rep push-ups. So I was like, hey man, I'll give you 50. And it caused a big argument. And a little while later, the chief came up and said, hey, I'm going to do these the way I want, and I don't really care what the rules are. So just leave it. The exact words were leave me be. And I went, oh, okay, chief. And then I kind of turned around back to the dude and I went, you did 100. And they were kind of like, well, the training coordinator's like, well, what happened? I'm like, well, how do I enforce this guy's form if the chief comes up and says I'm going to do what I want and leave me alone? It's just not fair. So yeah, give him the 100. I don't care. Unfortunately, that was the situation that we were up against. You know, and you know, it's gotten worse since I left, but you know, that's not my problem anymore.
I think that's a big thing too, is when guys are trying to push something, especially after they've already been told, hey, go check this out. And then they want to do it. They see the potential and the change. And then all of a sudden they're told their legs are taken out from underneath them. Then their whole motivation to do it's like, well, why in the hell am I going to do it anyway if it's just going to get shut down?
Right. It's terrible, right? Like it's a morale killer. It kills your motivation. And you know, it's one of those things where what's the saying? Like when people stop talking, there's a problem, or when people stop bringing up ideas, there's a problem from like a leadership level. And that
Hmm.
was something we saw. Um, and you know, I've talked to other agencies since then, and it's a common trend. And I think
Hmm.
I think it's normal to resist change, but I think law enforcement has one added aspect that keeps them from doing it, right? Like, you ever hear of like the law of least effort, where it's there's an argument that's made where humans are inclined to conserve energy and find the path of least resistance. Okay, fine. Maybe that's the way we're hardwired. Excuse me. But two, law enforcement is so worried about civil liability. And I think that's the biggest driving factor. And I've heard that from administrators, even at the SWAT level, like on my SWAT team, we're like, whoa, 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 we can't. I wanted to do a yearly written test, like of SOPs and knowledge, and it got turned down. Where they're like, whoa, 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 we can't have that because if a guy fails a test, what do we do? Kick him off? And
Yeah.
you're kind of like, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, we should, but they're like, oh, well, that can come back to bite us and we can't be writing things down. And I was like, man, everybody's just worried about the lawsuit versus take your bumps and bruises now, get rid of the dead weight, maybe bring on some new people and we start having a program the way it should be run. And then we don't need to worry about that, because we've set some kind of standard.
It's funny because you know you have the corporate world that functions and operates one way, and you have the law enforcement world that operates and functions another way. And in the law enforcement world, they say don't document anything so we don't get held accountable. In the corporate world, they document everything because they will be held accountable. And it's fascinating that in an industry with law enforcement, where we document every iota in order to go to court to defend ourselves, we do the exact opposite for our agency. Don't record it because we might be held liable. But if you record it and you have if you set standards and you say everyone's going to meet the standard, and then you have documentation that supports the standard, and you go to court, you just say, Your Honor, we have found through this research, this observation, this analysis, that in order to apprehend a subject, they have to be able to run 100 yards in at least a 7-minute mile. That's what it takes to capture or apprehend somebody who's running away. If you can provide evidence of it, like here are the 50 most recent reports, and we measured based on body worn camera and the where they started the chase, where they ended up the chase. We measured the distances, and we found that overall, most pursuits, most chases by running end within 100 yards. And we found that the ones who got away, the officer was not able to make that distance in the amount of time. The ones that we caught, they were able to make it within this time. You have evidence, you have the standard. But that's the problem that we have with a lot of law enforcement training, and a lot of the like what you just said. No, I think that's 100. We're going to do it my way. When they set arbitrary numbers and arbitrary standards which don't have any evidence behind it, that's what gets them in trouble in court. And I think if more agencies started building the evidence and the documentation to justify why they have that standard, you'll be able to get rid of the people who can't meet those standards. And when they sue, it's like, well, I should keep my job. Law enforcement is not tier one tech support. You actually have to go out and do stuff. It's a safety issue for that person, for the other cops, and for the community at large. If that person cannot apprehend a homicide subject who just ran away. So it's like listening to what the problems that you run into, and I've heard a lot of Jamie's agency set standards, and Jamie was a large part of setting those standards, right? So let's talk about that. What's the difference between the chief that just blesses in 100 push-ups and the agency that you have that has standards?
I think when you want to talk about the chief level, we have a chief that he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He is physically fit, like he is wanting to push those standards. So luckily for us, we have it at the top already. So it makes my groundwork at the bottom a whole lot easier. But I think how do you do it if you don't have that? I think it goes back to two things we've already mentioned. It starts with that ground level that's willing to push and willing to put in the effort on the back end to find that documentation. What should the standards be? Come up with all of the different agencies, look up all the different agencies that are actually putting those standards together, get science back behind it, and then when you present it, now you have all the evidence, so it makes it almost impossible for them to say no. And then when they do say no, well, now look, here's all the evidence. I have it all in front of you. Now you've seen it. Now it's on you if you don't want to set these standards, if you want to change these things.
Well, just like Uvalde, right? Agencies will always be reactive, and I don't know why.
Hmm.
It's a decades old problem where someone has to die or someone has to get extremely hurt. And what story I like to use to bring that to light is I was talking on my SWAT team about getting more into utilizing NVGs. And there was some resistance at the top about it, and I kind of was like, hey, like, and if we're going to do that and we're operating at night, we should have some kind of like a Hellstar 6 maybe on the helmet, a little bit of IFF so we can pinpoint where guys are. And dude, I got laughed at. Like literally my team commander laughed at me and goes, dude, those are bike lights. Those are stupid. I'm like, okay, man, what do I know? I don't know anything. I've only been doing this probably about as long as you. So not too long after, a neighboring agency was on a manhunt, and I don't remember what the guy did, but they were in the woods at night. They had no NVGs, and they were relying on the helicopter to walk them onto the target. And with foliage, like you would, they ended up right on top of the guy, and he ends up tubing himself. Luckily, he didn't kill anybody. But it was a big enough incident and almost like an oh shit moment enough for that SWAT team that they went out and bought NVGs the next day. So I took that and I went back and I was like, hey guys, look, like you laughed at me saying this will never happen. And look, it happened about a week later. And then everybody wants to take it serious. And it was like, any good training section should have a brainstorming meeting weekly, bi-weekly, whatever you want to, where you're looking at your SOPs and you're like, hey, what could happen? What's working? What's not working? What could we do to prevent these things? But nobody wants to do that, right? And then all of a sudden, a lesson gets paid in blood, and then everybody wants to change everything. And that was my biggest point of frustration was like, okay, cool, here we are yet again. Like it took someone to die or it took someone to get hurt for us to make any kind of change. And then it's knee-jerk change. It's not even good change. We're like, hey, we're going to do a quick 180. We're going to pivot on this whole thing. And we're going to implement this new tactic that I just saw on Instagram. And you're like, well, hold on. Like, that's not how we develop tactics. We need to pressure test these and run these through. But it's a very unfortunate dynamic. And I just, for the life of me, I can't understand why all these years later, especially with all the body worn cameras that we have, people still subscribe to being knee jerky about it.
The funny thing with the knee-jerk reactions too is it's a knee-jerk reaction for a few weeks, and then it's
Right.
on to
Oh,
the
and then
next
it's
thing.
forgotten. Yeah. And then it's forgotten.
So, like, take Uvalde for instance. Right away, everything was like, "Hey, we need breaching tools. We have to have breaching tools." Every agency was calling me all the time. "Hey, what tools should I get? What do I need to get?" And then we find out that the door was actually unlocked the whole time, and then everybody kind of forgets about it, and then nothing gets done, and kind of gets put on the back burner. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times we have to take those knee-jerk reactions when they do happen, and the people who are trying to push those different things need to say, okay, now's the time to do it. Let's do it now. Unfortunately, in our profession, it takes that to get shit done a lot of times.
Well, right, and like you said too, they want to do a quick 180 and create a tactic that reflects the incident that just happened. But that's not the case, right? Like you can't
Hmm.
say we're going to develop this TTP based off this incident because the next incident you may see may be completely different. So you need
Yep.
to take a broader approach to it. And Uvalde, for instance, like you said, like my chief was just like, hey, get active shooter training done. We hadn't done an active shooter training agency wide in 5 years. So we kind of like, we didn't even look at the incident. We were just like, all right, yeah, active shooter, got it. You know, it's a
Hmm.
mixture of active shooter slash HR, and we're just going to develop this. And we kind of gave it a 30,000 foot view without trying to get into the weeds on we need to breach or we need to do this. Or like, we know that. There should be,
Hmm.
even up at a patrol level to begin with, you should have breaching tools available.
You should, but most breaching tools, where are they usually at? In the sergeant's car, at the
Yep.
station, somewhere. And so my big push with my agency was let's get at least a Halligan at every car.
Mm-hmm.
That way
Yep.
there's something. And guess what we're gonna have to do now? We're gonna have to train everybody on it. So
Right.
it's gonna cost money, it's gonna cost time, but if you want it done, it has to get done the right way right now.
Yep. I just trained with an agency up north, and they have a new sheriff who's very progressive, and he's super about getting training. So I went up there, and I had the privilege of kind of looking at one of their search warrant operation briefs, and it was pretty good. They knew what they were doing, but operating with the constraints that they were kind of left with was they had no shields, they had no rams, like nothing. And I was like, dude, what have you guys been doing up here for all these years? They're like, yeah, well, we don't have anything. And I was like, well, between me and you, if we didn't have that, I wouldn't be doing any warrants.
Yeah.
We need breaching tools.
Yeah, it's fascinating how often admin. I literally had a lieutenant tell me this. I came back from New York for 9/11. I wrote a document about responding to a mass casualty event, laid out procedure and methodology for who should be in charge, when that should be taken. It went through the whole thing. Establishing a helicopter landing zone, establishing an ingress and egress, controlling perimeters, all that stuff. Wrote up. It was about 9 pages for a policy for a mass casualty event, because my agency was where all the three-letter agency executives slept at night. So if you want to shut down the federal government, blow up one of the schools in my county, and you're going to lose the FBI, CIA, DHS, DEA. You're going to lose all those guys because now they're going to be freaking out over their kids. So I handed it into the lieutenant in charge of terrorism for the county, and he literally told me, it'll never happen here. And it's always baffling. It's like, so here's the thing, man. And I don't understand why agency admin are like this. Not all admin, but I've seen more than I've seen not. My sheriff was amazing, was on top of everything because he'd been through a lot of stuff. But if it's happened in one agency, it can happen in every agency. And do you really want to be that agency that didn't prepare because you thought it would never happen here? We've talked about this before. It never happens here until it happens here. There's never been a school shooting at my school until a kid starts shooting up the school. So it's this disconnect. I don't understand the myopic disconnect that a lot of people have. And the only time I've had to really force innovative training in the face of resistance was with my academy. My sheriff was great. I got away with pretty much doing whatever I wanted to do. I worked my ass off for it to make sure I maintained that freedom. But the academy was the one that shut down everything. Absolute control freaks, didn't want anything different, didn't want to change anything, wouldn't let you see what other people are doing to adapt your training to what they're doing so you'd have consistency and continuity. It was the academy that was the issue. And so I just wonder how has Mesa dealt with eliminating that myopicness, and what do you think was a contributing factor for myopicness in your last agency?
So with us, I don't know. I think it comes down to several different things. I think it's the right people in the right positions willing to push to make that change. I know the last few years we've had a lot of the guys from my team now go over to training. So we're trying to be progressive in our training. We're trying to do things that we know work, that patrol never gets trained on, or that they don't ever teach at the academy. So now we're bringing those things to the academy, and we're bringing it to our in-service training as well. So getting the right people in those training positions that people look up to and people respect, I think is a big thing to make change within an agency as far as training goes. Because we all know those agencies, training units, and we've had them in the past in my agency where you have 2 or 3 years on the street, and then all of a sudden you end up at the training unit because the spot was open and you get it. Well, then you try to put on training without any experience, then the training kind of stinks, and it's like guys don't want to be there. But if you're starting to put on training that people want to be there for, they start to see the value in it. You can now start changing that culture to where people want to be at training. Or you have instructors that have an ego, and they're you go to the trainings and they're just getting screamed at the whole time and no one wants to go. So you change your delivery as an instructor to be humble and to listen, hear people out, listen to them, and help them along because you want them to get better, not because you want to prove how smart you are. Then more people start to want to do the training that you're teaching, and then it starts to evolve from there.
Yeah, and it's a layered it's a multi-layered problem, right? So everything's going to start with number one, right? So whoever
Mhm.
your number one is, their priorities are going to reflect the rest of the agency's priorities. Like, it just is what it is. That's where the marching orders come from. So if you have a chief or a sheriff that's just not big on training, you're going to have an uphill battle from the beginning,
Mhm.
right? You really have some work cut out ahead of you. And then you come into like you were saying, like back in the day, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, everything was happening in big cities and nothing was happening in Anytown, USA. Well, now it's always Anytown, USA, and big cities are just kind of like, it's kind of par for the course. And these small agencies are the ones always caught with their pants down because for 10, 20, 30 years, if you even just look at the numbers in terms of there's 1.5 million law enforcement interactions per year. Only about 50,000 of those result in some kind of assault towards a law enforcement officer. So, I mean, you're talking about a substantially small number. So the majority of people comply. So that's how these standards or the lack thereof are allowed to perpetuate for so long, right? Because most times nothing's happened. And then you get caught with your pants down, and then that agency will do like a quick train up, but they don't communicate that out to everybody else. Then you get into the egos. Oh, it won't happen here. It doesn't happen here. That was over there. Our guys are better. You don't know, man, because you don't know what that agency's training program was like. You actually have no clue. Or you think that your stuff works, and you may find out one day that it doesn't. And then, leadership wise, even if you have a chief or a sheriff or commander who's maybe kind of pointing in the right direction, like Jamie said, you have to put the right people in place. One thing I will say law enforcement has been very good at is really redefining what an instructor is. The red shirt crap is really going away. And it makes me so happy because it's not about the gatekeeping and the myth and I have a secret, I'm in on a secret that you're not. And now, like, what are the common things that we see? Like instructors, it's almost industry standard now that that you have to demo what you're talking about. You need to provide some kind of thing. You have these skills. Even like my girls' agency, there's still, they have a great training unit, but there's still some of those remnants left over. And they get a little irritated because she shoots better than them,
Mhm.
and it is changing in the right direction. Like I would say maybe about 5-10 years, you're going to see complete shift in what instructors should be. But you do rid yourself of that old school mentality, and the best way to do that too is ensuring that your people are staying current. Like practical shooting is pretty much taken over. There's no such thing as tactical shooting anymore. Like if I was a commander of a training unit, I'd be like, hey, whoever's teaching shooting or firearms, you better be looking at this, and you should be competing, and you should be going, like, send them out to training so they can bring that back. But and then, I don't know, it's like I was with such a bigoted agency that sometimes it's hard for me to be like, which way would I have gone with this? Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a lot of success. I had more success leaving, and I've heard this from other instructors. It's easier to affect change in law enforcement from the outside than the inside. I mean, it has been light years easier for me.
Do you face any resistance now to your training with agencies being on the outside?
I have, when they look at the curriculum and they look at the course content, no. The hardest part, and, just like anything in law enforcement, you need one domino to fall. Once one domino falls, the rest of them, be like, oh, I heard that was pretty good. And you're still kind of fighting the liability portion where they don't want to document things, or maybe they don't want to spend the money, or, there's certain aspects that you're still battling. But I've never had anybody go like, oh, that's not the way we do it, because I pride myself in making sure that my curriculums are all up to date and in lockstep with current practices.
Right.
I think it's funny. I felt the same thing in different aspects. While we do have a pretty progressive agency, there's been some things that I've tried to push that I got a lot of pushback on. But then I go teach it to outside agencies with my company, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever heard. Like, how do we keep pushing this?" And now they're one of my biggest advocates for, like, let's just take, for instance, one of the big things was like a crisis entry for patrol. I had a lot of pushback from my agency. I tried doing it and was told not to do it because we had to teach the lowest common denominator. It was a whole mess. We are working through that. Now it finally got approved. And so now I'm able to teach my agency, but I've been teaching that to other departments and on my own trainings for a long time. And yeah, sometimes it's like my kids in sports. Well, I'll say, hey, do this, do this, do this. And then they go listen to somebody else, and then they're like, oh, that's exactly what I should have been doing. I'm like, I've been telling you that forever.
Yeah,
Right. And
same thing with like my small unit tactics course. I developed that specifically because over the years, I always noticed that every law enforcement scenario starts with poof, you're at the front door. And I'm like,
mhm,
run the data. Where are all these officers getting killed? On approach or at the front door? We need to change that from
yep.
patrol to SWAT level like incidents. So I created this whole course. And then at my agency, I got well, this isn't the Army, buddy. And I was like, it's not, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, this is for law enforcement. It pretty much got shelved, and I was kind of hesitant to bring it back up again. And now I talk to other agencies, they're like, dude, this is the best thing ever.
hmm
We've never trained this ever. And I'm like, I know, that's why I created it, because it's not, as far as I know, there's nothing else like it out there right now.
Yeah, I would love to sit and talk to you about that because I have my advanced patrol course, which is all small team tactics. So
Yeah, no,
I want
absolutely.
to want to
Link
give you a
up on
call one day and we'll start talking about seeing what we're doing. This probably the same exact shit.
probably. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I've seen in the last 3 months 4 companies that are doing something like that. Exigent response, small team tactics, things like that. So it's interesting that you say that you're doing more outside, and then for Jamie, he got his rep by going outside and then going back into his own agency. And it's like the old saying that a prophet has no glory in his own land.
Mhm.
I tried to bring a lot of change to my agency, and most of the resistance was from other instructors within the agency. But in the academy directors were set in their ways. They've been doing it for 30, 40 years. We're going to keep doing it this way until I got somebody that would pop on my side or call the academy and say, no, I'm the sheriff. I want him doing this training, and he's going to do it at the academy because we're paying half the bill for the academy. And then the academy is like, oh yeah, we always wanted him to come along. So is that something you would recommend that instructors who are trying to make change in their agencies to start hang their own shingle and start training other agencies to do this stuff?
Well, I
Is
mean,
that a tactic?
I would always suggest going through the chain of command first, right? Gather your data, present your, and not just, I saw a lot of guys that are like, hey, we need this kind of training. And it's like, okay, dude, my biggest thing is quantify that. Explain to me why.
Hmm.
Don't just say because we do, give me the numbers. Like, we had this incident within your own agency. Like, don't go outside. Like,
Bring
look,
receipts.
yeah, like bring receipts within your own agency. Pull your uses of force, identify any issues, and go, look, this is our agency. This reflects what we're doing, and this is how this course can remedy this by X, Y, and Z. If you get shut down, yeah, you got some hard choices to make, right? Like maybe go out on your own and pressure test it elsewhere. And then, yeah, maybe they'll be more likely to go, oh, this guy's having success with this and other people are doing it. Because now, these agencies are going to have like FOMO, right? Like they don't want to miss out. Yeah, they're going to go, oh,
It's
all these agencies are doing it. Now we need to do it too, because otherwise we look stupid.
and
So,
that's exactly how I started doing the law enforcement training because my company, I was just focusing on active shooter response for civilians, businesses, schools, threat assessments, all that stuff. And I was at NTOA 3 years ago, and all the debriefs were, or all, not all the debriefs, but all the classes were like, SWAT's the best, patrol sucks, they screwed it up. Now, now SWAT has to come and clean up the mess. So me and my buddy Mike asked several of the instructors, hey, what are you guys doing to fix that? Like, well, nothing. So we literally on a piece of paper on a napkin wrote down a 3-day advanced patrol small team tactics course and brought it up to our agency. And we said, hey, we want to do this. We have a bunch of hard chargers that are constantly calling us for training. Let us put this training on for some of these good dudes that want to get better, want to move to specialty units that are in patrol, like want to be a leader in their patrol area. And they said, this is a great idea, but sorry, we can't do it because we need you to teach all these other things and you don't have time to teach for 3 days. So I looked at my boss and I'm like, hey, I have my own company already. I'm just going to go do this and take my own time. And he's like, well, I guess you could do that. So then it's funny. Now I set up a course, get a bunch of dudes in it. Now I run that course a few times a year in my agency, or my agency hosts it. But now all the same tactics, all the same classes I've been doing for the last 2 years for our in-service training. So I'm getting it out there, but it took me going outside and doing my own thing with it in order to bring it back in.
yeah, and you got to learn how to play the game a little bit too, right? Like, so intra agency, and this can piss people off or it helps things, is, man, put things in email, like
Hmm.
back alley conversations. That doesn't, they're just going to tell you no, and that's going to be the end of it. But if you're putting things in email and you put a proposal together and you're like, hey, I want to meet with the chief or the sheriff and present this to training, and it's all time stamped and now it's public record in most states, they're actually more inclined to be like, like we
Yeah.
have to at least
Hmm.
entertain now,
Yeah,
because
you have to
he's
bring
put
the
us, painted
evidence.
us into a corner, right?
Yep.
Because they do say no, and then something happens, they're gonna be like, some attorney somewhere is gonna be like, hey, didn't this guy just send this email about how there was a lack there? Like, you do
Hmm.
have to learn how to play the game. I've seen a lot of guys just stomp their feet and be like, we need to shoot better, and you're like, why? Like, cause you're like, that's not how you do it. That's not how you approach that situation.
Yeah.
So just to, I love what you said about put it in an email and send it. That's exactly what happened with Zuckel v. Denver. Is that the district attorney had sent a letter to Denver PD saying you need to have more training on use of force and shooting incidents because they'd seen a rise in shooting incidents, and they hadn't implemented anything yet. And it was because of that letter from an outside agency that said you need to do more training that Zuckel v. Denver went to Zuckel. So not only can you send an email saying, but you can also say per Zuckel v. Denver 19 or 2000 whatever 2018, I can't remember the exact date now. You know, we need to do more training. Here's the evidence of it. Here are the statistics and all that stuff. I think if instructors got more into learning how to do data science and started looking at and reviewing, if we set it up like if the instructors just started taking upon themselves to do a lessons learned after action report, send me all the use of force reports for the last 90 days and start looking for trends and start creating trend data, reading the reports to make sure that it wasn't they showed up and they were immediately attacked, but by analyzing the reports. It's like I say all the time, research, observation, and analysis. We have the material in our agencies to do all that analysis. We don't have people who are actually doing it either because they don't know how or they are afraid of upsetting somebody for asking for that material. So there is case law that supports exactly what you said, but there's also ways of going about and starting to prep the battlefield. We're not supposed to just rush into things. We're not supposed to just rush into the field of battle. We plan. And the same thing for making change in the face of resistance is, okay, you resist this, and I tell my kids this all the time, make them give you a reason for no. And if their no comes down to, because that's what I feel like, and you don't have any evidence to counter their feelings, then you're stuck with it. But if you say, per this case law, based on my analysis of the last 90 days of use of force reports, I'm seeing a trend of these issues. Can I create a training to address these issues for the whole agency? And now if they say no, because I just don't feel like it, okay, it's documented. Now you
Yeah,
have to justify it somehow.
right. And the biggest thing that I've always seen people have success with was break down, like, most guys will come with big incidents that didn't happen somewhere, right? And like, dude, no, man, break down your own agency's
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah.
my agency had shootings where guys missed by 50 feet and like hit Kentucky Fried Chickens across the street, and people were observed not knowing how to clear malfunctions, put the gun down on the ground, like all types of wacky crap. But you have to compile that with specific incidents and then bring that back and go, look, this is your agency. This isn't some crazy thing that New York City. Like, this is specific to us. And they may piss them off, right? Because now you're forcing them, whether they want to or not. They can't say, oh, that's somewhere else that has nothing to do with us. Like, no, man, this is us. This is
Sorry, I was a little so Bill is watching his daughter. So that's what's going on. The boss of the house just joined the call, so he's dealing with that.
I think what you said, just to pick up on that, is yeah, with pretty much every agency having body worn cameras, it's so easy to now dissect all that stuff.
super.
And send an email out to everybody. Hey, I'm looking into X, Y, and Z. Give me all the cases where you guys have had these incidents, and you'll get info from officers. They'll send you, hey, look at this case, look at this case, look
Mhm.
at this case. And we have a big agency like mine. It's hard to know all the different things that have happened. But as I've reached out to sergeants or other people that I know, yeah, hey, look, I got 3 different emails today of different cases to look into for something that I'm wanting to push in a future training as well. So those incidents are there within your own agency, and now with body cameras, you can pull that and now see it live and see, okay, this is why we need to change this.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, even down at the patrol level, at the squad level, there should be no reason that sergeants aren't reviewing BWCs after, like, just a pursuit,
Yeah.
man. Like, hey, how was our perimeter on that? Did we get good containment before we decided to move in on this guy? Were things where they needed to be? Like, it's not hard to do. And like you said, especially with body worn cameras now, there's no misconstruing, really. Like, what you're looking at is exactly what happened.
Mhm.
So it's like the wheels of progress. It makes me laugh, like how much energy and effort agencies spend into looking at data for like UCR stats and all these other things, but when it comes to performance, they won't do it. So the easiest way to do it is at the lowest level, just someone compile it all and then bring it back and be like, just down to, like, my agency had a problem with foot chases. Like, everybody was getting smoked because we had no PT standard, and it's like, guys, we're losing all these foot chases. This is a problem. It's actually not okay to lose a foot chase. I don't even know that. Like, that guy got away, like, ran into a house. We don't know if that's his house. Like, we need to get better at certain things. And again, going into the changing the culture thing, like, tell a couple sergeants, they start feeding you stuff, and that snowball grows as and unless the agency turns around and goes like, hey, Jamie, stop doing that, which if they were smart, they wouldn't do that. But
Mhm.
unless you're actually told specifically, like, stop, just keep doing what you're doing.
Do you think if so? One of the things I advocate for a lot is making training a specialized unit, and that would be one of the goals of the specialized unit of training is being able to objectively analyze body worn camera reports, things like that. And then if you build a training team that's a specialized unit that doesn't fall under a specific division, even going so far as to have training as its own division, they become the independent third party consultant for the agency. Small agencies might not be able to do that so much, but you can stand up a regional agency. You would just have to be able to communicate between each other. I'm sorry, a regional team. I think if mid-sized to larger agencies were able to have that select that a specialized unit of a training team, they build the trust to be able to do all this analysis. They would have access. So when they actually start talking about things, they become a predictive organization. We've been analyzing all this body worn camera. We've been analyzing reports. We're seeing trends in this way. Before we get down the road and somebody gets hurt, let's go ahead and create a training to stopgap problems before they become problems. Because that's one of the things that if you do training correctly, it can be predictive. If you do instructional design and the research the right way, you can offset a lot of the problems. You're always going to have the outliers, crazy stuff. An alien drops from the sky on a pirate ship and invades a Walmart. But for the most part, human behavior is all within a bell curve, and we can start seeing trends. Do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm on board with that. And, just knowing what I know, and I'm speaking for my region because I know the agencies here. A lot of the chiefs and sheriffs are terrified of the liability boogeyman. So do I ever
Chris
see
said that literally last week.
right? Like, do I ever see them letting go of training and making it a regional thing because they want to control the outcome? Like, let's be real. Like in law enforcement, admin wants to control the outcome. But what I do think is feasible, I think an outside party, like in the early days of GWAT, the call center became a thing in the Army. It was the Center for Army Lessons Learned, where they were compiling incidents and they were breaking down how they happened. And then they were saying, look, this is what we were doing and this is how it ended. Like that's how the cat tourniquet became a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Like the call center to me was, this is just my opinion, almost instrumental in standing up NAEMT. Like they were like, oh, something needs to change here. So if there were third party outside entities, like in Florida, for instance, where I'm at, public records are very easy to get. You have a call center, like a lessons learned center for law enforcement, and it could be regional or it could be a state thing. And you just start compiling things and you break it down. You have your experts and your instructors break it down and look at it and then punch it out to every agency, because we all know in law enforcement, nobody communicates properly, right? Like, yeah. I think an outside third party would benefit, and I think it would be the path of least resistance over getting chiefs and sheriffs to like let go of command and control of something that they're afraid is going to bite them in the ass later.
Yeah.
One thing we've talked about in the past too is the importance of like supervisors being instructors. And if more supervisors knew how to debrief and how to analyze body cam footage, analyze cases that their officers are doing, and then actually have a good AAR on what happened instead of just giving a high five because we got lucky, we'd be able to fix a lot of this stuff because officers would already be debriefing that after the call, like, hey, we should have done this, we should have done this, instead of high-fiving each other and then never really going back to the mistakes and fixing the mistakes that they made during that call.
Well, there's also the problem of law enforcement celebrating battles that were never fought, right?
That too.
For 99.9% of uses of force, it was what the suspect decided to do. If he gave up, it's because he decided to give up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we've all been in a foot chase where dude just like, all right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
And what that lead to? A tackle, right? Like I tackled him because he stopped. I didn't tackle him because I actually caught up to him and he did something. Mm-hmm. Same thing with hostage rescue, right? What do they say? 80% plus of hostage rescues end in, they call them successful negotiations, but ultimately, like, you didn't change his mind, he changed his mind, right? But they call that a win. It's actually not a win.
Mm-hmm.
Law enforcement has a huge habit of doing that. And so they're high-fiving and they're like, oh, everything went well. And it's like, all right, well, do we have like a checklist of like, was this luck? Was this skill? Or was this attributed to good tactics? Like, which one caused that outcome? Or like, did bad guy just give up and that was the end of it? And until things start happening along those lines, and like law enforcement takes a good look at the fact that your tactics didn't work, the suspect just decided he was done. Until we like swallow that pill and then move forward and start pressure testing what we do know, like, you're still going to see these problems.
Bill, do you have anything to add? You've been making a great image on the screen, handsomed up the place a bit.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, guys. I'm on dad duty tonight, so gotta take care of the little girl. So No, good stuff. And Pat, it's good to finally get you on and talk to you. I know we've chatted a bunch before. But dude, I like everything that you guys are talking about. There was one thing that I wanted to kind of hit on that Pat mentioned it kind of, and Rick hit on it a little bit, but I think when we're talking about like implementing some change with resistance, get understanding that at the lower level of instructors, maybe even up and comers, or the instructors are encountering resistance with some stuff, is bringing the training that the people need, not what you want. And a lot of times I've seen, like, the firearms guys are like, oh, we're going to be running bill drills all day today, which is a good thing. But if that's all you do every time you go to the range, you're missing out on some of the deficiencies that are probably there. So if doing something like providing some sort of analysis, like Rick had mentioned, and you bring those things as an instructor to the admin and say, like, hey, this is what we're seeing, like you said, foot chases or on use of forces, or we're getting bad reps with stop sticks, or wherever the case may be. You formulate that data from your agency and you bring it up and you say, hey, this is what we have. But not only bring them the problem, but I also developed this training plan to address these deficiencies. So it's everything in a button, and you put it in an email, and now the ball's in their court. Like, because if they tell you no, they're saying that those deficiencies don't matter. Whereas if you just go to them and say, I want to do stop stick training, they're going to be like, no, we don't have time. There's no repercussions for that. But when they have everything in front of them, the answer via email is going to be a lot harder. That might be like, come see me in my office.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot harder than without that. So I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Playing
it's
the
a lot easier to
game.
get change when you show up with a solution rather than showing up with a
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah. And the other thing, like I say, like, I almost want to put it on a shirt, man. I always tell people, I'm like, all right, quantify that for me. Tell
Mm.
me why. And I had a mentor back in the day who he was on our board of directors for a different agency I was with. And I would ask for things and he'd go, okay, tell me why you need it. Not that I know you want it. Tell me why you need it. And I was just kind of like, oh, this makes a ton of sense. And it almost forces people to actually bring the receipts. Because when the answer is not, well, we'll just shoot better. And it's like, okay, well, are we shooting poorly? Oh, I don't know. Well, why
Mm.
don't you the accuracy rates on our last few OISs? Then come back to me, because now we have a nice product and we can ball that up and give that to someone and say, look, identify problem, identify solution, cut the check.
Yeah, exactly.
And it reminded me of something I did in my agency where I knew that we were having problems and issues with how people were managing just a response to a domestic. And as you know, if you give a cop an airsoft gun, they 100% expect ninjas to pop out of mailboxes, pirates to come flying out of the ceiling, aliens showing up with their laser guns and everything. And so I didn't call it training. I called it a domestic response assessment, just to see how do people. I framed it as, we just want to see how people are responding. The question was, are they going to get sucked into the perceived threat and forget about the other person, or how well do they control the scene? So the scenario was, we had my squad volunteered for this. We set it up so they all hung out at a fire station. We had a dispatcher on one of our tertiary channels, and they would have to respond to a house. When they showed up, they'd find a cute blonde woman. They'd find a 5'6", 120-pound guy on the other side of a couch with his hands up like this. She's carrying on, screaming, yelling, and going on. They're coming in, waiting for the ninjas, and they find out that nobody's attacking them yet. And they calm the situation down, take the report, separate, and all that. So that sets up the baseline. How are they going to perform with this? The second call, we tell them, okay, it's 6 months later, and the cop goes to the same house, which we've done before, for a domestic, which we've all seen before. They come into the house, it's the same cute blonde in the same place, but on the other side of the couch is 6'5", bald goatee, 300-pound muscle bound dude standing like this behind the couch on the opposite side of the couch. Out of 10 cops, 5 of them controlled the scene as they were supposed to. 5 got shot. 2 never returned fire. What happened was that if the responding officer got sucked into and tunnel vision on the big guy who they perceived as a threat, even though he's in a defensive posture, being totally peaceful on the other side of a couch, the woman would go down the hallway, count to 5, pick up an airsoft gun, count to 5, walk back to where she was, count to 5, lift the gun up at the boyfriend, count to 5, then shoot the boyfriend, shoot the cop. 5 got shot, 2 never returned fire. So when I was initiating this planning stage, we ended up having a captain, 2 patrol lieutenants, and the sergeant for the squad observing. And their number one question was, aren't they going to perform differently once we're standing there? I said, yes and no. I said, either way, it's a win. Because if they do exactly what you expect them to do in both situations, you know they know how to do their job. If they don't, and they get sucked into it and becomes real, you'll see how they're actually going to respond on the road. And that when they saw their 5 cops get shot and the 2 not return fire, those 5 immediately went into not remedial training, they went into they went to a domestic response training on just how to control a scene. Because if they had controlled them by keeping the woman in their perspective, she never would have gone down the hall. And there's a couple times where she started going down the hall like, no, ma'am, stay right there. I'm not going to tell you again. And they never lost track of who those people were. So doing things like that, setting up scenarios where you can just assess people's behavior for squad leaders can lead to trust being placed with the instructors that they know what they're doing, as well as finding opportunities for additional training. Because my agency, we never did any kind of advanced training on domestics. They just assumed if you didn't get shot, nobody else did, you're doing domestics correctly. But are they really? So if we started doing that with just creating evaluation opportunities, creating assessment opportunities to just test where people are at their current skill sets, it gives the supervisors an opportunity to see what their people are doing, and it gives them the metal to back you up for additional training on those topics. But it has
Well,
to be very structured.
even at the patrol level, the supervisor level, we don't even need to set up training to do that. You know, like my agency used to do random audits to find policy violations. Like the training section or the supervisors can do random audits of body worn camera to see if you're actually operating safely, right? Like we could just pull some of your calls and just see how you handle them and then go back and go, hey dude, like, man, you let homie get in that back room, you took your eyes off him. Yeah, that domestic you were at last week, like maybe be careful. I don't know of anywhere that does that. And I don't know why not.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to find one agency that audits body cam for safety problems when there's not a use of force, like just your everyday calls.
I've
You
been
know,
saying that. Yeah, I've been saying that forever, and I actually have that in my book. Is we have millions of hours of body worn camera footage. Why are instructors not going in there to just assess performance, to do an analysis, not for gotcha? We don't want to use it as we found you suck, we're going to put you back through basic or anything like that, but just to assess the performance of people to get an idea of where the gaps are, what people are doing well, and adapting training for the gaps that they're finding. They don't have to single anybody specifically out. It's such a powerful tool that's being completely neglected, except by Phoenix.
yeah,
Chris has just let us know that Phoenix
I
does this.
work in Phoenix. I was on the phone with Chris yesterday, and I really see a lot of things that Phoenix PD is doing. And I'll be honest with you, they're probably one of the progressive agencies I've heard of. I mean, it's phenomenal the stuff they do.
Yeah, Arizona's got some really good agencies. Absolutely.
Yeah, I got back from Arizona. Actually, I was on the border with the sheriff's office down there, and they were great. They were fantastic.
We're hiring.
We're hiring.
One of the things that you guys that just piqued my interest as we were talking about this is you take those body worn cameras, you take those situations that people have messed up, or even ones that you watch them and they do good. If you're going to set up scenario based training, use some of those. Take some of those same exact situations and now put several people through it to see how people do, to see how people react. Because the way I do it may be a little bit different than Pat does it, and the way maybe he does it a little bit different than Bill or Rick. But then you see several different outcomes. But I think too often in training, instructors try to get big, giant, elaborate scenarios that really have no value
Mhm.
besides some gotchas or they just kind of go overboard. But take real life scenarios and then implement those in your scenario based training. And then you can bring up the topics and do an AAR on those, just like you would the regular call where the officers did good or bad on that call.
Right, and I think that's a place where instructors lose touch, right? When you come off the street, right, that hourglass of relevancy starts to dwindle away and you
Mhm.
forget what you saw on the street. But if you're reviewing body cams, like you're saying, like scenario based, I've met so many instructors throughout my career, and I'm sure you guys have too, that like everything was a doomsday scenario. But when you're on the street,
Hmm.
a lot of times those doomsday calls usually turn out to be nothing. It's the stupid ones,
Hmm.
trespassings, the domestics, the unknowns, the disturbance, that they always become the shit shows. But like as an instructor, if you're in a training unit, you need to be going through that body worn camera to see what's trending in your region or in your jurisdiction, so you can provide effective scenarios for your officers later.
The nice thing about that too is once you've done that training and you pull the body cameras, you're like, we got to work on this, and you do that training. Then 6 months later, you pull the body cameras again, and you're like, hey, look, this is what we have now. This is what we started with. We see a significant improvement, and then that gives credence to whatever program you developed, and then that's your buy-in for the admin. Be like, all right, we know how to fix this now in house. We can repeat this for any other
Right,
process that we encounter.
right, measurable progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
And we've
sure.
done that with our DT program for sure. The way we've implemented over the last couple of years and changed what we're teaching and how we're teaching it. Now we're compiling all the body cameras of all the officers doing it the right way, just like we're teaching it. And now we're getting buy-in from the people that didn't want to do it. Now all these other agencies are starting to come to us. What are you guys doing different? Now here's the body cameras of all the stuff that we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. Come over, we'll help you out, and now we'll start to change the culture within other departments as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's rad.
And that's such an easy one to start with too. Like if people are stumped and they're like, I don't know where to start with this, that's such an easy one to start with because the results are very, very evident when you pull in those videos. And it's not, once you get a good program, it's not that hard. Uh, it's not require a lot of logistics or anything. So that's a really simple way to start. The tactics stuff is tougher because there's so many other things that go into it. But once you figure it out, that's an easy one to tackle.
Yeah, for
I think if
sure.
you just keep even the tactic stuff, as long as you keep it simple, don't
Mm.
Simple, yeah,
overcomplicate
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And hey, this is how we're going to deal with this, and these are the principles that we're trying to teach you. And once your officers understand the principles, just like in DT, all I'm trying
yeah.
to do is control the hips and the hands. As long as I learn how to do that, I can do it. Same with tactics. What am I trying to do? Here's the principles of whatever tactic I'm trying to do, and be
Correct.
reasonable with how you do it.
And even
Yeah.
from a safety standpoint, a lot of the things that go wrong stem from huge issues. Like, yo, bro, you let homie go in that room. You let him
Yeah.
out of your sight. Why'd you let him back in the car to go get something? Like these are issues that
Hmm.
those are the issues that are going to bite you in the ass. It's not like, oh, you didn't pry that door properly, and that's why that happened.
Exactly.
That's
Uh-huh.
rarely the case, right? It's always like a massive officer safety blunder. Like, you didn't detain dude when you realized you should have. Like, why didn't we not do that? Like, those are the issues you need to be watching for, because those are those gross incidents that are going to cause injury or death, God forbid.
But even more simply, how many agencies have accidents, and how often are patrol going through driver's training, just driver refresher training? It's more cops are killed in traffic accidents every year than gunshots and CQBing and pine doors or hostage rescue. But how often are we just doing something as simple as EVOC training? Now, granted, I say simple has got quotes on it because it's a lot easier to do reps in CQB on an office door than it is to drive around on I-10 or something trying to replicate a pursuit. There's not a lot of driving courses, not a lot of people have access to courses, and tires cost money. But it's something that should be done a lot more than never.
Hmm.
And once I finished basic, never did another EVOC course, never unless I wanted to go to an EVOC instructor course. And we did active shooter training once in my agency, 5 years after I got out of the academy, and then not again for another 5 years. So I think that the key that's missing is data. If we're not providing data, if an instructor isn't gathering all that data together with evidence, with potential case law, we don't have a leg to stand on to go up against that resistance. If we're going to go to battle for a course and we come without any ammo, are we surprised that we're taking fire and not shooting back? We have to have that ammo with us when we go fight these battles. That takes time, that takes effort, that takes thinking, and we know there are some instructors, very few. I'm gonna pretend that I believe this. Very few that are unwilling to think, unwilling to work, and unwilling to put in the effort. Fortunately, and it's been a great experience. Since I've started Letnick, we're at a year that Letnick has been on Instagram. I've been amazed and overwhelmed at how many guys like y'all and the people who follow us and the people who are attending all of our lives are motivated and hungry for doing this change. Because even 15 years ago, I don't think I would have these conversations with maybe more than 3 or 4 people. Now, I never went to ILETA, and apparently ILETA is full of guys like us too, which, by the way, I'm presenting at ILETA if anybody wants to meet up and get a dinner or something. But the thing is that,
You buying?
am I buying? I'm going to be sleeping in a tent in St. Louis in February, dude. That's a hotel. If by buying means I jump in the dumpster for the donuts, yeah, I'll do that.
Sold.
I'll try to get the freshest ones on top. But that's the thing is that, and what I'm presenting on is how to evaluate training for efficacy. Starting to evaluate your training for efficacy. Man, I'm like dying here.
So happens to use
Efficacy.
big words, Rick.
Yeah. Make good, smart course. Be good, der. See, I can't even do that well.
I understood that.
That's more my speed.
show us the calluses on your knuckles. But what I'm getting at is if you're going to have quality training evaluation for how well it impacts, you have to start with data at the beginning. You have to know where your agency is. You have to know where your people are performing now in order to gauge whether that training was effective at all. We can do that now. We can start that process now. All of these instructors, all of our motivated, hard charging instructors, start gathering data now. Do ride alongs and record everything that people are doing. Not because you're trying to catch them things, but just what is it that somebody does? Do a task performance analysis. There's no reason we can't do that. Instead of sitting in the office throwing squeeze balls at each other and just talking about the war stories, get out there and do work, gather data, gather information. That's the only way that we're going to be able to push through the resistance is with data and with evidence. Off the soapbox, sorry.
I agree,
I
man. Nailed it. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
I will say, going back to what you talked about when you started Letnick, I think that's been just not to toot your own horn, but that's been a big thing for me to start seeing that there's other people like me,
Yeah.
other instructors that want to push the limits, that want to make training better. And I know the small circle here within my agency and Phoenix and a couple other agencies around that are like-minded. But now, thanks to Letnick and a few other things, there's lots of people that are reaching out. What are you guys doing different? I want to do that. We are trying to do this, but we're getting this feedback. Just know that there are tons and tons of other people out there that have the same mindset, that have the same mentality, that want to push this profession to where it should be and to raise a standard. And you're not alone. You're not on an island by being the only one that's doing
Yeah.
it. There's lots of other people willing to do that.
Yeah, and the civilian sector in the training world is getting so big and it's taking off that I within 5 to 10 years, I would imagine the majority of law enforcement training is probably going to come from the outside. That's just my opinion.
Mhm.
That agencies are going to have to cave because you can only brush off the experts so much. And once guys are, all these guys are doing breakdowns and we've all done them on incidents and like it's not the agency can't be like, oh, it is what we say it is anymore. Like those days are done. So I really think that the civilian sector in the training world is going to take over here shortly.
Which means we need to make sure that those who go into the civilian training sector have their crap together. I had this conversation with LET Network. It's a new training platform, new e-learning training platform that Jamie has a course coming out on, if it's not out already. I had a great conversation with the 2 guys who started this. And that's one of the things that we've addressed is that there are a lot of instructors out there and there are a lot of really bad instructors out there. And this idea of bad training will wash itself out, that's true. But what happens to all the people who went through that bad training, who wasted their money, wasted their time, and now are poorly performing because they've had bad training, but they have the confidence that they've been trained?
And they
So,
think that that's the gospel because it's somebody from the outside coming in. And so now
Mhm.
this is the only way to do it, but they've been trained and it's been insufficient training.
so I think that with this comes up, it's going to take people like us to really make sure and scrutinize and start calling out bad training. It's, people say, well, the whole training industry is toxic. It's only toxic to the people who it needs to be toxic to. I take that back. That's not necessarily true. There are a lot of really good instructors who get attacked a lot by people who don't know anything or people who think they know stuff and are very confident in their lack of knowledge. There needs
I
to
think
be, go ahead.
I think that's why it's important to do what you're doing. And like, if you're a good instructor and you trust your material, be willing to have someone like Rick come in and evaluate your course. Be
Hmm.
Yeah.
willing to say, hey, is my course valid? Am I doing all the right things? And if not, you're going to get found out, or you're humble enough to be like, cool, I can fix that. Because that's what I was willing to do. I'm like, I I have lots of people around me saying, I love this, but I need someone else to tell me from the outside, what do I need to fix? What do I need to do better?
So
You know,
there's actually a good comment here that coincides with what we're talking about right now. So it said, how do you make sure that what they're teaching is relevant, especially with newer trends? So I like to use the same or structure that medicine uses, right? And what do? Peer reviews. So
yeah.
you
Hmm.
have to do your homework to see what's current, right? You just have to do your homework to see what's current. And
Mhm.
instructors need to be willing to stand on their curriculum. And to do that, and Rick was one of the first guys I met when I started my journey to be like, hey man, take a look at this and tell me what's wrong. I gave him my course and he
Mhm.
gave me an honest opinion of it. And it was eye opening for me. But you need to be able to present your curriculum to experts. And if you're signed off on by like 10 experts, okay, cool. We're pretty sure that we're in the right arena. And and because things change so much and threats evolve, you have to be doing your homework. Like, I had a conversation with someone who was a cop 20 years ago, and they've been teaching the same stuff, literally the same stuff that was like their last frame of reference from 20 years ago. And it's like, dude, you've missed like 15 steps, but you don't even know that because you haven't been out in the space. You've just been living in your
Mhm.
own echo chamber for so long. Like, to me,
Yep.
peer reviews are everything. Like, I will take any of my classes and give them to everyone and go, punch holes in it if you can. You're not going to upset me. You're going to be doing
Yeah.
me
Yeah, and please do tell me
right.
where I can improve. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not an ego show.
Hmm.
You know, it's interesting. I announced my independent third party course review program back in December of last year. It's like $300. I'm not advertising right now. I'm just saying it's inexpensive. And to this date, only one person has taken me up on that, and that's Pat. Pat is the only instructor that's ever reached out to me and said, "Hey, will you review this and give me some feedback?" Now, I've evaluated over 60 courses for IADLIS NCP program, and I've worked with some of those companies in getting their courses to pass NCP. I've failed some classes, and I've seen those classes pop back up. But seeking out independent review, peer review of your training is not just handing it to your buddy across the desk because he's going
Hmm.
to slap you on the back and say, "Yeah, this is great." Jamie also had the experience of being my first validation for the training evaluation program. I sent that rubric to 5 people. Pat was one of them. I said, "Hey, can you give me feedback on this rubric?" I had 5 people. Mike Pannone was one of them also. He gave me feedback. Critical Thinking in Germany gave me feedback. Second Stoic gave me feedback. I took all that feedback. I didn't take, I read through it, and if I didn't necessarily agree with it, I had reasons for it. But most of what they provided was like, hell yeah. But then that first validation, that's the other thing that's not happening in training, is if somebody is bringing a new course up, ask them, how many times have you validated this? Well, what's validation? It's where you take it and you run it through 3 courses and make sure that your intention of the class is actually going to succeed. I could have just started this training evaluation program, and when people say, well, what makes you think this is the right thing? And said, well, based on my 30 years of experience in law enforcement and training, that's, but who cares about that? If
Hmm.
I've been wrong for 30 years, I only have 30 years experience being wrong. So now I can go through and I can say, well, Jamie Gissel and EPF, there's a number of dudes who've all volunteered, including Pat. Matter of fact, Pat's coming out to Bryan, Texas, and I'm going to be evaluating one of his courses. And as part of the validation, it's getting the peer review, getting people who are outside your circle to validate and verify that what you're doing is right. And when I failed courses, one of the longest conversations I had with Chris Palmer. I was failing a course. I talked to Chris for 2 hours. We talked about why this course was wrong, and he validated and verified everything. And he had no skin in the game. He didn't even charge me for it. But he gave me all the evidence about why this course is actually dangerous if it passes. We can do this. It's like, I'll do it. I'll do it. I pretty much help anybody with their work. I work with Bill on his work, but you don't have to necessarily pay me, but find people within the same space who can give you honest feedback, who you trust to give you honest feedback. To say, you're doing this tactic based on based on these 5 cases over here, that tactic doesn't work.
Yeah, and even just like with AARs, the last course I taught, like guys would be like, hell yeah, brother, I loved it. And you're like, to me, I'm not okay with that. I want to be like, no. Tell me, give me something. And when I do my AARs, I'm like, look, you got to give me something. I don't want to hear I liked it. Tell me what you liked. Tell me why you liked it. Tell me how you think it's going to help you moving forward. Inversely, I didn't like it. Okay, what didn't you like about it? And then is there something that that I don't? Like, I need actual reasons. I'm not going to sit here and walk around and just go, oh, dude, everyone loves my course, right? Like, because it's bullshit. It's bullshit at the end of the day. Because a lot of people do, like, we've all sat in AARs where you just kind of like, yeah, no, it's all good, right? Because you just want to get out of there. Like, so as an instructor, if you've ever sat in that seat, you need to be cognizant of that and actually dig a little deeper and ask more questions.
I agree. Hey, I got to bounce early again. My kid's got his playoff football game tonight, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna
same.
bounce.
Hell yeah.
Pat, good to talk to you. You
Guys,
guys,
man,
good
it's
to
a
talk to
pleasure.
you. I'm gonna
Thanks,
bounce out.
Jamie. Good
See you
luck to your
guys.
son.
See you later, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, same vein, dude. I got to run. I got to put the baby to bed. But, dude, it's been a pleasure, man. Hopefully we get to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Grateful for y'all coming on. We try to keep these to an hour, and we try to make sure that we're providing solutions, giving people ideas that they can run away with on their own, take back to the agencies, take back to the command, empower instructors to make change. So we're really grateful, Pat, for you coming on.
Yeah, no, thank
You've had a lot of resistance, and we're grateful for the struggles you've had that have made us all stronger.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Well, I'll
Awesome.
talk to you guys later, man. Y'all have a good weekend.
All
Later,
right. Have a
Pat.
good night.
See you, bro.
Bye, y'all.